Welcome back. I'm Reed Cowan. More backlash mounting after President-elect Donald Trump's cabinet picks. California officials confirmed Defense Secretary pick Pete Hegseth was investigated for sexual assault allegations back in 2017. A public statement from the Monterey Police Department in that state revealed little details about this alleged incident, except that it was investigated and that the injuries found on the alleged victim were contusions on the right thigh. So Hegseth denied all accusation, contends the sexual encounter was consensual. In a statement to CBS News, Hegseth's attorney said, quote, "As confirmed by the Monterey Police Department, these allegations were fully investigated. Mr. Hegseth was cleared. This should not have any impact on the confirmation process." So let's talk about this. Let's go live to CBS News political reporter Olivia Rinaldi. This is another big headline out of some of President-elect Donald Trump's picks. What else are we learning about these allegations out of California? And have we heard anything from President-elect Trump on this?
Yeah, good to be with you, Reed. We learned late last night, early this morning, that there was an altercation that occurred between Pete Hegseth and this unnamed woman back in 2017 that was investigated for sexual misconduct by local police there. And as you mentioned, there were no charges pressed, but there was a victim involved who was left with contusions on her right thigh. Vanity Fair, the news magazine, was the first to report this, and they also reported that Susie Wiles, Trump's incoming chief of staff and campaign manager throughout the duration of the 2024 presidential campaign, was notified about this on Wednesday. We are working to confirm that as well, but it comes at a time where Trump's nominees and his picks for various parts of his cabinet are under scrutiny as they seek to be, put into the cabinet and confirmed by the Senate. And this investigation by Hegseth, I should mention, his attorney said was investigated. There was no wrongdoing. They said it was consensual. And the campaign said that they are putting forth the best nominees that represent Trump's wishes and what he would like his cabinet to do in his second term. So all this is we're learning, as I mentioned, these various backlashes from several of Trump's campaign officials or cabinet officials that he would like to put forth.
You talk about backlash, but I have a question for you. Are we hearing anything from the president-elect's camp that they did a background check on him and had prior knowledge of this? I mean, we're hearing that Susie Wiles was told about this just in recent hours this week, but did they know about this before? Have they said if they knew about this before?
They have not said whether or not they knew about this before, but just to broaden the picture out, the nominee of Pete Hegseth was one that we did not know about until Trump announced it. We had been talking with various officials on the campaign, outside the campaign, that have been advising the transition, and no one had mentioned his name until Trump put out that release. I believe it was on Wednesday night. Forgive me, I'm losing my days. There's been a lot going on and a lot of news over the last 10 days. But we found out that he was even someone being considered that night when Trump announced him. So all very fast moving here, and it's kind of indicative of how this whole transition process has been going. It's been very tight-lipped out of Mar-a-Lago. People that on the campaign we normally talk to have been very tight-lipped about what is happening within that transition process. Very insulated, very insular, mostly Trump meeting with people he's close with, including Elon Musk, who's there as well. Charlie Kirk is someone who's also been at Mar-a-Lago, but indicative of how fast this process is moving, and perhaps someone that may not have been subject to a complete background check before Donald Trump announced him. I will say, though, that that is part of the process. You nominate your cabinet, and then they have to go through the Senate and get approval there before Trump can have them in his cabinet. That's part of the reason why we're having all this conversation about recess appointments. If Trump can just unilaterally put them on his cabinet, bypassing that Senate checks and balances portion of this.
Right, and that part of it remains a huge question, whether the Senate will just go for those recess appointments or say, whoa, we've got to have some confirmation hearings. Another name making headlines today, Robert F. Kennedy Jr. He has been tapped to head up the Health and Human Services, a part of the president-elect's cabinet and campaign promises to be fulfilled in Robert F. Kennedy Jr. Let's listen in. I want to talk to you on the other side of this. It looks like the president-elect really doubled down on his support for Mr. Kennedy Jr.
We want you to come up with things and ideas and what you've been talking about for a long time, and I think you're going to do some unbelievable thing. Nobody's going to be able to do it like you, and boy, does he feel it in his heart.
So walk us through why this potential nominee is being met with such backlash. He does have some controversial opinions, but what's really at the root of this?
Well, really at the root of all of this is that he's nominating Robert F. Kennedy Jr., someone who's deeply distrustful of vaccines and the process in which vaccines are approved, to now lead the agency that oversees all of that. And that's kind of what we've been seeing so far. The nomination of Matt Gaetz to Attorney General to be the top lawyer in the country, RFK Jr. to lead HHS. It's that Trump is nominating people who are distrustful of the agencies he is asking them to lead. And it's part of this whole argument that Trump has been making, that he's been elected, given a mandate to disrupt the government. Some of the things that RFK Jr. has said is that there's a chronic epidemic of disease in the country, and that he's been skeptical of, vaccines causing autism, ADHD, infertility issues, to name a few things. But I will say that the reaction on Capitol Hill last night, we saw Republican senators really embrace him. Bill Cassidy, he's a doctor, he's a senator from Louisiana, saying that he supports this pick and he's interested to see what RFK Jr. would do. I can tell you, just as someone who's been on the campaign trail, once RFK Jr. endorsed the former president and started becoming a little bit of a fixture at those rallies, he was embraced by the base, and they would often wear shirts that said "Maha, Make America Healthy Again." So that's a new faction of the Make America Great Again movement that we are seeing, that is really the embodiment of RFK Jr.
Meanwhile, a chorus of doctors are saying that, especially where the vaccine opinions are concerned, are flat wrong. Another question for you, Olivia. You're also keeping an eye on the vacant Treasury Secretary seat. Sources tell CBS News there's a front runner there. Who is that front runner? What more can you tell us?
Well, I've been hearing that the front runner is named Scott Bessent. He is a Wall Street mogul. He runs Key Square Capital Group. He's a Trump mega donor, and he's been part of Trump's inner circle, talking with him for the last several months. He's from South Carolina. The interesting thing there is he's known in South Carolina politics as well. But he's been the front runner for this Treasury pick. And the interesting thing about that is he's known as Trump's stock market whisperer. I heard about this while I was on the campaign trail about Mr. Bessent. But essentially, he would tell the former president, now president-elect, that the reason why the stock market was doing so well wasn't anything coming out of the White House or reaction to perhaps other economic factors, but it was because the market was pricing in a Trump return to the White House. That was his reasoning for some of those record highs in the market we saw over the summer. Of course, Trump enjoyed hearing that, and he would talk about it often on the campaign trail. But now Bessent is jockeying for that Treasury Secretary role. It's one of the big, outstanding roles we have heard about. He's also someone that has really embraced Trump's economic proposals on tariffs, on no tax on tips. It's been an interesting thing to see that evolution, but there are still other people jockeying for that as well, including Howard Lutnick, who's leading Trump's transition team. He's been trying to make a pitch for himself as well. So we're anxiously awaiting. It seems like between 3 and 4 o'clock on the East Coast is when we're starting to get a lot of this news. So witching hour is coming up, and we'll try to figure out who is going to be this Treasury Secretary pick.
All right, you've got your catcher's mitt on to catch that. Hey, really quickly while we have you, Olivia, I want to ask you about Trump and Iran. CBS News confirms the Biden administration did receive from Iran saying that they were trying to assassinate President-elect Donald Trump. Walk us through what is happening where that threat risk is concerned.
Well, this has been an ongoing topic of conversation throughout the final months of the campaign, the Trump campaign, often talking about this Iranian plot, or the Iranians being very upfront that they wanted to assassinate the former president. Now the Biden administration confirming that was their goal, and there's been some topic of conversation there where the Iranians said they would not try to do that. But I will tell you, just advisors I've spoken with on the Trump campaign, there was a bit of frustration with the Biden White House that if Iran, an adversary, was trying to attack the former president, why the response to them wasn't stronger. In fact, pointing back to previous presidential cycles where we would be in elections and any threats towards the opposing candidate was met with harsh criticism and a reaction from that White House, and asking why that wasn't happening here. So I suspect that relations with Iran will become a little bit more tense as Trump returns to office, because we know this is something he would like to tackle with them as well.
Olivia Rinaldi, thank you so much. A masterclass in knowing a whole lot about a whole lot. We appreciate you. Have a good Friday. Let's take a live look at Capitol Hill now, where lawmakers are dealing with the fallout of President-elect Donald Trump's latest picks for those critical cabinet positions. Moments ago, House Minority Leader Hakeem Jeffries saying this during his weekly news conference. Listen.
And the former president promised on the campaign trail that America would have the best economy, the best border security, and the best administration possible. And the question that we have to all ask, when we're confronted with nominations like Robert F. Kennedy, Jr., are these the best individuals available to the incoming Trump administration? Is Robert F. Kennedy, Jr., by way of example, the best that America has to offer? Will he and others give us the best opportunity to make a difference in the lives of the American people? Or are there other people who are better qualified to do the jobs that need to be done on behalf of the American people?
Hakeem Jeffries there. So let's bring in Julie Grace Brofke, a congressional reporter for Axios. Moments ago, House Speaker Mike Johnson was asked about releasing that ethics committee report regarding Matt Gaetz and said, quote, "I'm going to strongly request the ethics committee not," end quote. What else are you hearing regarding Matt Gaetz?
Well, it's definitely a controversial pick for Donald Trump, and has gotten some mixed reactions, with firebrand conservatives very excited about the pick. He faces an uphill battle on being able to lock down those votes in the Senate. But this ethics report's really kind of been a point of contention, with a lot of moderates wanting to see it and members of the Senate wanting to see it before those confirmation hearings take place. And we've heard Matt Gaetz in the past call this entire ethics investigation a political hit job by McCarthy, but we'll ultimately see kind of how the two chambers kind of manage to reconcile that as they kind of look to get that information.
All right, and we want to get your reaction to a soundbite that we just got. Stay with us and let's play this for our viewers.
Yeah, clearly President Trump is moving fast to get as many people appointed as possible. It shows that he's carrying through on the mandate the voters just gave him to lay out his cabinet, to get to work. He and I talked this morning about some of the things that we are going to be working on. I've got a meeting later today with some of the committee chairs to start working through more details on budget reconciliation. We've been having conversations here for months on what that would look like. So clearly, we're going to get into some more detail today on that as well. So there's no slowing down. Look, we're already getting to work. We're not going to wait till January.
That's Representative Steve Scalise saying no slowing down. We're not going to wait until January. So we're starting to hear a smattering of reactions to these picks. Hakeem Jeffries, Mr. Scalise there. What are you hearing from other lawmakers there on Capitol Hill?
Absolutely. So there's been kind of like a slew of picks that President-elect Trump has put out there, from Kristi Noem to Tulsi Gabbard to Matt Gaetz, that have kind of been met with pushback even within the Republican Party. That being said, I mean, when it came to the Senate leadership races, recess confirmations were a big part of that, and Trump made it clear to those leaders that he wanted to be moving quickly. And we'll see if he manages to be able to rally all those members behind some of these more confrontational individuals. But there'll be some interesting confirmation hearings for sure.
Julie Grace Brofke, thank you so much, congressional reporter for Axios. It's nice to have you on CBS News 24/7. Well, the man accused of killing a Georgia nursing student on trial as we speak. When we come back, we'll be talking about what will be said before the jury that will decide his fate. CBS News 24/7 moving on the map now to Georgia, where we are watching the chilling trial of the man accused of killing 22-year-old Georgia nursing student Laken Riley. Laken's death gripped the nation back in February when she was found dead on the University of Georgia's Athens campus after just going out for a jog. Her alleged attacker, Jose Ibarra, was in the country illegally at the time. CBS News reporter Jared Eggleston was inside that courtroom watching all of this. You have the latest, Jared. We're hearing about a recorded call by the victim. What can you tell us?
Reed, good afternoon. That's right. In the opening statements this morning, the prosecution brought out the 911 call that Laken made during this struggle that they're saying occurred between Laken and the suspect in this case, Jose Ibarra. And in that call, you really don't hear much. They said they had to have it amplified by FBI in Quantico. But what you do hear is the 911 call center trying to get a hold of whoever was on the other line of this call. We now know that Laken Riley was on the other end of that line there. But that was just one of the 911 calls that was brought up this morning. We also had another call from when some of her roommates and some of her friends were trying to just find her during the early stages of the investigation.
Really bringing to life her last moments, so crucial for the prosecution. We also saw some charts from a Garmin watch that she wore. What came off of that data? What was the data from the Garmin watch?
So Laken had just gotten this Garmin watch for Christmas, prosecutors say, and that she used it to track her running. Many people have smartwatches similar to Apple Watches. This one was tracking her heart rate, her speed, all of those types of analytics. And so police were able to kind of piece together what exactly was going on by using this Garmin watch data and also some other phone data. And I want to have you listen to the prosecutors describing just how they were able to piece that together.
There are some things that we will never know about exactly what happened between Jose Ibarra and Laken Riley on that trail, but we know enough. And what we know is that at 9:10 a.m. from her Garmin that she was wearing, as she is trucking along and she is clipping 7-minute miles, she's running, doing her thing, listening to music, something happens. He does something to her to make her stop dead in her tracks. She initiates the SOS function on her phone and calls 911, and she immediately stops. And after that, you'll see some of this Garmin data, her movement, because it went to the FBI CAS team. They're the ones that analyzed it, and you'll hear about it. She's on this trail with this defendant for about 4 minutes, and then you see 4 minutes later, her Garmin move 65 feet into the woods, and there's some additional movement of her along that time, and her heart rate is still going until 9:28 a.m. Her encounter with him was long. Her fight with him was fierce, and that is what the Garmin data shows.
And Reed, just hearing them recount that there is very harrowing, and you can see the emotion on a lot of people's face in the courtroom as they are talking about this this evidence. We have her roommates and family members as well, those who are really close to Laken. So it's tough for them. Some of them have even had to step out during parts of the testimony so far.
All right, and let's go to some of that sound that we have from that moment in court, because I think it really drives home the human part of this story. Let's listen.
I just published State's Exhibit 17 for the record. Is that the manner in which Laken would wear her running tights above her belly button?
Yes.
So explain to us, that's her roommate there. What was happening in that moment?
So the roommate, that specific roommate, ran a lot with Laken. So the prosecution was bringing her in to talk about just her running habits and also some of the clothes. There are some questions about potential sexual assaults and allegations related to that, and just how her clothing was found on her when police ultimately found Laken. So they were discussing in that particular moment, Reed, just how she normally would wear her clothing when she went out for a run. Just some horrific details already coming out in court this morning. We're just back in from a lunch break, and testimony continues right now.
And we want to let you get back in court, but for contrast's sake, you saw the emotion from those who love her. She is somebody's somebody, after all. What kind of emotion, if any, did you see from Mr. Ibarra, who's also in the courtroom?
You know, so far we haven't seen much emotion from him. He is having to listen to the testimony through a translator. So I think there's a little bit of a lag there. But so far we have seen no real emotion on his face, staring straight ahead anytime the camera points to him. And that's mainly how he has been in many of the pretrial hearings, and then also today, Reed.
Jared Eggleston, back into the court for you, my friend. Thank you so much for stopping and coming out and talking to us on CBS News 24/7. To Houston, Texas now, in video that really tells the story of a takedown of a suspected terrorist. Look at this video. It comes from the FBI. It shows those FBI agents rushing an apartment complex that housed a man that they believe planned a terror attack. So the feds believe 28-year-old Anas Saeed is connected to terror group ISIS. They say they found propaganda videos produced by Saeed, and in fact, court records also show that he offered to help in a plot to kill former President George W. Bush, even discussing military recruitment centers in Houston. Listen.
He offered his home as a safe sanctuary to ISIS operatives. He bragged that he would commit a 9/11 style attack if he only had the resources.
So the feds say Saeed really felt that the October 7th, 2023 Hamas attack was enough to spur him on towards violence, pushing him to the top of their priority of the national security threats. Well, again, in the United States, we see hotel workers on strike. Ahead, we're going to go live to where there are a lot of hotel rooms, Las Vegas, Nevada. We're going to talk about the sticking point between the very powerful and very political Culinary Workers Union and a hotel just off the Las Vegas Strip. Welcome back to CBS News 24/7. Just ahead of the holiday travel season, hundreds of hotel workers hit the picket line today outside of a casino near the Las Vegas Strip. This is a stalemate between Virgin Hotels Las Vegas and members of the very powerful Culinary Union, and it's happening at another really important time, and Formula One is about to come to Las Vegas. CBS News reporter Andres Gutierrez joins us live from Las Vegas. Andres, what are the sticking points? We understand the hotel company had put an offer on the table yesterday, but the union says it's not enough.
That's right, Reed. So essentially, they've been asking for a 5-year contract. The only thing is that the first 3 years of the contract that the hotel proposed didn't have any pay raises, only years 4 and 5. Then yesterday at the bargaining table, they were offering to spread the monies from years 4 to 5 throughout all 5 years. But the union says that is not enough. They have been without a contract here since last June, this particular hotel, Virgin Hotels Las Vegas. What they are trying to do is mirror the deal that the union was able to make last year with the MGM Grand, the Wynn Hotel, and Caesars, in which they were able to get them a 32% pay bump, and that's to over 40,000 members. Remember, the Culinary Union here in Las Vegas, very powerful, 60,000 strong, and
right.
So they were able to get those folks last year 32% pay bump, so that means people that were making about $27 an hour originally got bumped up to $38, which in this day and age, that can mean a lot.
Well, and this is not just a flashpoint there in Las Vegas where there are so many hotel rooms to fill, but we also saw similar protests in San Francisco, hotel workers following the mandates of their union to also strike outside their hotels. As it relates to Las Vegas, though, specifically, we're hearing that these hotel workers want guests at the hotel to pack their bags, to check out. So if this strike goes on, what is the potential impact there, especially with Formula One coming into town?
Well, that's what we're waiting to see. Right now, there are people still checking into the hotel. We're being told that some front office workers are kind of manning the operation today. Room service not available today because the food and beverage workers, well, they're out here on the picket line, have been at it since dawn. So we will see how things pan out here in the coming days and if they can reach some type of deal before Formula One kicks off next Thursday.
All right. Thank you so much for checking in with us and being a part of our CBS network of stations that we partner with and work with. Andres, thank you very, very much. A Russian drone attack in Odessa, that's about 130 miles south of Kyiv, killed 1 person, injured 8 others. You see the smoke rising from that building. This video to our monitor shows those apartments on fire, cars on the ground destroyed, damage, in fact, to the city's main central heating pipeline. That's an important headline here because it's cold right now. 40,000 people affected by this. They are in the cold. We're also understanding heat is out at a hospital, a maternity hospital that serves mothers and children. Let's come back to the United States. The moment rescue crews saved a construction worker from piles of rubble in Louisville, Kentucky. You saw this first as it began to play out live right here on CBS News 24/7 yesterday at this same time. That worker hoisted out, the result of hours and hours of work. Earlier, going back in time, he fell about 10 feet into a hole at that construction site yesterday afternoon. Then concrete, debris, fell on top of him, trapped him for 9 hours. Well, those hardworking and fast-moving emergency responders, they stayed on the job. The worker is out, score 1 for saving a life. An Alaska Airlines flight made an emergency landing at Los Angeles International Airport after blowing a tire during takeoff at Dulles International near Washington, D.C. This is the moment of touchdown there. The pilot put the plane down safely, but as you see from the flashing lights there, first responders, they were there on the runway just as a precaution. 175 passengers and 6 crew members on board. Seeing those flashing lights there, they were rattled, but safe. The emergency landing status, we are told, declared by that pilot just as a precaution, not knowing what would happen when the wheels of that tire hit the ground. Let's talk about wildfires on both sides of the United States. So firefighters in Southern California's Mountain Fire region, They're going into the weekend to report some major progress. It's a monster fire that burned almost 250 homes and destroyed citrus and avocado farms. Good news going into the weekend, they've got it about 95% contained. Thousands who evacuated will be able to go back to their properties to see what, if anything, is left. Now, let's go to the other side of the country where firefighters are also doing some pretty heroic moves. Firefighters have the deadly Jennings Creek fire along the New York-New Jersey line 75% contained. And look at this, crews literally fighting fire with fire. You see that? Looks like an orange snake there through the trees. Those are fire lines. They are lit there to keep the fire from going past the own lines lit by the firefighters. There's a challenge, though, when they do this. As you can see, as that orange line snakes up through the trees, it's also snaking up a mountainside. That's what you call rough wilderness terrain. And so let's bring in Jessica. We're looking at all the smoke from that, and we're wondering if Mother Nature will be a friend or foe to firefighters as they finish the job.
Well, now we're starting to see strengthening winds coming in from the north. It does make it more challenging for the boots on the ground out there. And by the way, to all the families of those firefighters and to the firefighters themselves, thank you so much for what you're doing, especially in the Northeast right now with these dry conditions. I mean, just this week alone, we had storms just to the south, closer to Virginia, the Carolinas, but those storms were pushed down from some more dry air up into the Northeast, and that dry air plays a key part into why the National Weather Service has issued a red flag warning throughout Massachusetts, Rhode Island, all the way over into the state of Connecticut as well. So here's what we're expecting as we head into the evening hours tonight. Those winds are going to start strengthening, anywhere up to around 25 miles per hour. That's what we're expecting right now. Those winds continue to track in from the north in areas like Boston, over into Hartford, where we've been seeing record-breaking dry conditions. The month of October was one of the driest on record for the nation. And look at what that means for us. We've been seeing these brush fires pop up widespread throughout the mid-Atlantic and all throughout the Northeast. Now from the Northeast stretched over into California, we've been dealing with our own dry conditions too. Southern California still dealing with the mountain fire. So much improvement this week though when it comes to containment. As we head into this weekend, there's great news for our friends down there. Despite the fact that the winds are still gusting up to around 30 to 45 miles per hour, we're starting to see rain in the forecast throughout that mountain ridge and all throughout those higher elevations. Even some snow in those elevations too. So we'll continue to keep a close eye on that for our friends down in Southern California.
I see you got the gray memo.
Yeah.
All right.
I like it.
Jess, thanks. So the man President-elect Donald Trump wants to make major health decisions in our country is in the spotlight. Big question for a lot of people. Can Robert F. Kennedy Jr. or any of the other more controversial picks get through Senate confirmation? That question straight ahead. More breaking news from the Trump administration. CBS News has learned the president-elect intends to nominate Stephen Chung as the White House Director of Communications. Now, who is he? Chung was a major part of the president-elect's campaigns. He's also reportedly a former communications official for the UFC, connected to UFC boss Dana White, who has been a very outspoken supporter of the president-elect. Sergio Gore, president and co-founder, reportedly, of Donald Trump Jr.'s publishing company, also being tapped. He will, if confirmed, be the director of the Presidential Personnel Office, will oversee thousands of appointments within the Trump administration. More on this to come. Well, the Trump administration in the hot seat today over the president-elect's additional key choices for cabinet positions. He named this man you see here, Robert F. Kennedy Jr., as his intended nominee for the head of Health and Human Services. Now, that choice sounding an alarm among a lot of health administrators. RFK promised a number of changes to the department, including those vaccine requirements and FDA regulations. And a reminder for our viewers, whoever leads Health and Human Services becomes head of Medicare, head of Medicaid, head of the safety of the food and medicine in our country, the CDC, or Centers for Disease Control, and the NIH, which is one of the world's leading medical research centers. CBS News reporter Alexander Tin joins us now for more. Let's start from the beginning here because there's so much to unpack and a lot of dissenting voices here. Walk us through some of the moves Kennedy Jr. says he wants to make if confirmed by the Senate.
Yeah, well, it's a long list of his so-called Make America Healthy Again platform proposal ideas that he has laid out over the course of, those days leading up to Election Day and obviously since then. But some of the big ones focus around three major buckets. The first one is his real concern over food additives and pesticides and other chemicals and other unhealthy things he thinks are in the food supply and that federal health officials haven't done enough to get it out of the food supply. The second bucket of issues goes right at the heart of those things that you mentioned, his long record of skepticism over vaccine safety. He's made it clear he doesn't want to ban vaccines, but he has promised to what he does. He often calls it restore the transparency around vaccine safety and release these secret records he accuses officials of hiding. And the third bucket goes at another set of concerns he has, which is claims that the federal public health bureaucracy has been captured by corporate interests. He's hoping to essentially get rid of large portions of the current staff at those agencies, including a specific proposal to fire all the nutritional scientists across HHS.
All right, so a lot to talk about, but I really want to think about who we're talking to. Let's think about the mother that's sitting in a doctor's waiting room, maybe watching this with some headphones and streaming while holding a child on her lap. That mother has questions about the real-world implications of a potential Kennedy Jr. nomination. What say you to that mother about those real-world results of this choice?
Yeah, well, I mean, you mentioned it right at the introduction. RFK Jr., if he's selected for this position, would be directly in control over a large swath of America's public health infrastructure. That includes things even like, we talked earlier about his skepticism about vaccines. The CDC has a direct role in deciding which vaccines are recommended. Those recommendations translate into which vaccines your insurance company is required to pay for when you go to the hospital and you need to get those shots for yourself or your kid. So again, there's a large public health bureaucracy he's going to be in charge of that has a direct effect on the kind of health care that people access every day in this country.
Yeah, but are these changes within the rights of the Health and Human Services Secretary?
Right. So we have heard from federal public health officials that a lot of the reason that we have not seen these kinds of dramatic changes in the past is essentially norms. We heard, for example, from the FDA commissioner saying that while it is the norm that most decisions that his agency does day in, day out are done by career civil servants, scientists who are making their decisions on whether to approve certain things, it is entirely within the law. Even though not within a norm, it is within the law for the HHS secretary and potentially the president to intervene, especially when you get into those kinds of gray areas where it's not a clear approval or rejection. So there is a lot of authority there, and Kennedy has called for supercharging that authority. He wants the president to declare an emergency to fight what he calls chronic disease. That would even broaden his authority further.
Alexander Tin, nice to have you with us on CBS News 24/7. I hope to see you back very soon. All right, when we come back, we're going to show you tape of a smackdown between Mike Tyson and former YouTube star Jake Paul. It's a moment you will hear and you will see, and it happened before the fight even started. Stay with us.
Oh, ladies and gentlemen.
Oh, ouch. That's just the weigh-in, folks, before the fight between Mike Tyson and YouTuber turned fighter Jake Paul during the final stare-down the day before their anticipated fight on Netflix. CBS News correspondent Omar Villafranca joins us live from outside AT&T Stadium in Arlington, Texas. Omar, more tickets certain to be sold, more eyeballs on that after that moment. For those who are not familiar with boxing, why is this fight, as they say, a punch above between other matches we've seen in recent years?
Well, what's interesting, this is a little bit like boxertainment.
Right.
58-year-old Mike Tyson, I'm going to say that again, 58 years old versus 27-year-old Jake Paul. There's no belt on the line, but there is a lot of money and a lot of eyes are going to be on this. Jake Paul's expected to make $40 million. Mike Tyson, $20 million. This will be streamed on Netflix, which is a first for that streaming service. So interesting to see what's going to happen. And I talked to a sports manager who told me having it here at AT&T Stadium, Jerry World, as we call it locally, where the Dallas Cowboys play, Jerry Jones is a modern-day P.T. Barnum, and this is just the new big top.
Yeah, and in very tiny underwear, Versace, Mike Tyson. Okay, so what's the significance of this fight?
Yes.
I haven't had lunch yet. Could have gone without that all day, but go for him. What is the significance of this on a streaming platform like Netflix?
Well, I mean, Reed, people want to find out. The old model was pay-per-view, but they want to see if they can go towards stream. If you're 40 and over, you know who Mike Tyson is. If you're 40 and under, you probably have no idea who Jake Paul is. But Jake Paul has hundreds of millions of views and clicks on YouTube. He's turned into a boxer, and they're kind of hoping that they can inject new blood into the sport of boxing. And it doesn't hurt when there's $40 million for Jake Paul and $20 million for Mike Tyson. So fresh eyes, not one of those things where people buy it at pay-per-view and see it at home. They may be streaming it on their phone, the way they watch Netflix out somewhere. And this is going to be the biggest sporting event for Netflix. We want to see how many people tune into it. So that's going to be a pretty interesting thing to see for the future of the sport.
Interesting and money-making. I'm just going to put this out there. I'll take $5 million to take a slap from Mike Tyson. He can even knock me out for $5 million. I'm just going to put that out there, Omar.
I mean, I'll fight everyone in your studio for $20 million at the same time. Are you kidding? This is serious money.
Serious money. And I have a feeling neither of us will be in little tiny underwear by Versace when it happens. All right.
No.
Omar, thank you. And say hi to the person behind you who looks like he's practicing for his match as well. Swing, swing. We're seeing it.
I think he's getting ready. He's getting ready.
All right. 1-2 punch on a Friday. I need to close my eyes there. All right, so a follow-up to Hurricane Milton's devastation at the Tampa Bay Rays. Milton shredded, look at that, most of Tropicana Field's roof and left major water damage on the inside. The cost to fix it all by the 2026 season? Well, it has a wallet bigger than Mike Tyson's, $56 million. In the meantime, we understand the Rays will play George Steinbrenner Field thanks to the New York Yankees single-A affiliate, the Tampa Tarpons. Jess, it just shows you the power, though. That stadium roof just ripped off there. Ripped kind of like this guy with the biceps.
So much devastation from that past storm. Now, let's talk about the tropics. Here's what's happening. We're still in hurricane season, and I know that's hard to believe when we're gearing up for the holidays and we're starting to think about Christmas right around the corner and Thanksgiving, too. How could you forget? Down in the south, closer to the Yucatan Peninsula, near Belize and Honduras, there's another named storm that we continue to keep a close eye on. It is Tropical Storm Sarah, strengthening still at a category. It's not a category yet. However, we are keeping a close eye on it with max sustained winds close to around 55 miles per hour. Now, as this storm continues to gain a little bit more strength, moving its way into the Belize coastline tonight, we are keeping a close eye on what damage that's going to do for them. Anywhere up to around 10 to 20 inches of rain is expected all along that shoreline near Honduras, stretched over into Belize. As those winds are still relatively weak, pushing across the peninsula, we'll continue to watch that move back into the Gulf of Mexico into early next week, and forecasted models are showing it potentially entering those warmer sea surface temperatures and moving its way off closer to Florida. Now, what the strength is going to look like, how strong those winds are going to be, that's undetermined as of now, but we are keeping a close eye on this because the leftover storms at least could move their way closer to Tampa, like we just saw. Devastated still from the past hurricane. We'll have more on that coming up in a bit. For now, back to you.
Well, our CBS News Eye on America series keeps us rooted in the value of community-based journalism, telling your stories where you live. Today, we drill down on a very difficult number. More than 1,200 people died in the United States during interactions with police. That was last year. By the way, if you're keeping track, that's the deadliest in the last decade, according to a nonprofit that tracks the data from law enforcement agencies nationwide. You know, no civilian death put a city's police department under more intense scrutiny than the 2020 murder of George Floyd in Minneapolis. CBS News correspondent Usher Qureshi looks at what's changed since Floyd's killing.
Yes, look at that texture. Look at you go.
Sage Carroll's pottery workshops are shaping more than just clay.
My parents came of age in the civil rights movement.
These gatherings are about shaping the conversation.
We are having a conversation around policing in Minneapolis.
In the aftermath of George Floyd's murder, the Minneapolis City Council shifted almost $8 million of police funding in 2021 to expand other services. $150,000 put aside for artist-led community healing, programs that look like this.
How do you maintain hope?
I don't know that I am still hopeful, but I don't know that it's going to get better, and I don't really think that it will in my lifetime.
I naively thought that this was a place ready for change, and it just wasn't.
Minneapolis Police Chief Brian O'Hara says repairing what's been broken requires a paradigm shift.
Slowly, we began to make changes incrementally to address, kind of getting the culture of the agency in line with the values of the community. Assalamu alaikum.
He's made a point of hitting the streets himself, showing up on scene, going on ride-alongs, and meeting community members where they are. The Minneapolis Police Department has spent at least $2.5 million on training and recruitment since George Floyd was murdered in 2020. But some community members here say that hasn't translated to trust.
That's why the biggest thing for me is not to just change policy here, it's to change what cops actually do on the street.
Months after O'Hara took the job in 2022, Minneapolis police entered into an agreement with the Justice Department to address a pattern and practice of abuse. That followed a ban on chokeholds and restraining techniques like the ones used on Floyd. At this training facility, O'Hara is literally changing out the posters, like this one that shows an officer being held hostage.
Does it reinforce fear?
Certainly. Sort of that us against them, that very, very militaristic approach to policing.
So we can think about Minneapolis as representing both the promise of liberal police reform, but also its persistent failures. And
Still, Michelle Phelps, a professor who's written about the politics of policing, has seen positive strides.
There have been a number of innovations about how do we think about reducing that contact between police and community members, and you're seeing other kinds of responders that can come into those situations that aren't armed with a gun and that aren't trained in how to deploy violence.
Make sure you get those individuals right there that say they need resources.
Muhammad Abdul-Ahad is one of these responders.
Our work is more preventative, they're more responsive.
6 nights a week, he leads a team of volunteers, de-escalating conflicts before police are even called. What's the relationship like between you and police force?
I think the trust has been, elevated, much better now due to the new chief that's here. He comes from this work, so he understands this work.
Where is Minneapolis today, 4 years later?
I mean, we're going to get through whether or not, the systems start to work for us.
Community and cops still struggling to find the common ground necessary for true healing. For Eye on America, Usher Qureshi, Minneapolis.
Well, a former Detroit Lions linebacker now faces felony charges in connection to the January 6th Capitol riot, including charges of assaulting officers and resisting arrest. Videos captured 31-year-old Meander Antoine Williams that day. He's the first January 6th rioter charged since Donald Trump won the presidential election. That's key because the president-elect has signaled some, if not all, January 6th rioters could be pardoned on day one when he takes office. Jumping the map to New York City, where the trial of the veteran accused of a deadly chokehold continues. We're talking about Daniel Penny, accused of killing Jordan Neely. The latest testimony comes from the Marine Corps martial arts instructor who trained Mr. Penny, seen here leaving court in a suit to use that chokehold. That instructor testified that he gave multiple warnings to Penny to not use that chokehold longer than 5 seconds, but he also added something that people in court heard, and that's not always applicable to real-world situations. Penny pled not guilty to second-degree manslaughter and criminally negligent homicide in Jordan Neely's death. We've also got an update to a death sentence in Texas put on hold moments before Robert Roberson was scheduled to be put to death by execution October 17th. The state Supreme Court there just ruled a subpoena issued by bipartisan lawmakers cannot be used to stop his execution. Roberson is on death row for shaking a baby to death. These new developments now make way for a new execution date in the future. We are watching what happens in that state and whether the governor will weigh in on the future of Mr. Roberson. That's it for us for now at CBS News 24/7. More coverage throughout the day. When we say 24/7, we mean it. Thank you so much for watching.